Hey everyone, George here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my 5 top tips on making you successful at having a beautiful aquarium if you are new to this hobby. Now, you're not going to like what I say. The bottom line is you're not going to like what I say. But when we come back, we're going to start with the number one reason why people fail at this hobby, and then we're going to go down to the last 5, and all of them equally important, but this first one is essential because it's the very beginning of all of it and something that you have to do. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. Hang in there with me. We'll be right back. Like I said, welcome back everybody. It's been a week of putting out a bunch of videos that I'm way behind on, but I thought this one was really important because I got a bunch of different emails and comments on some of my videos about why people are failing at starting in this hobby. And the number one reason is so important, and it's so preventable. And it's something that just takes some patience, which none of us have. I did it too. When I first got into this hobby, I was convinced, and we're talking about 25, 30 years ago, I was convinced that I could do all this by putting fish in and everything. I was in saltwater at the time, which is a much more complicated prospect back then than it is now. But the bottom line is that if you are not cycling a tank, that's number one. You have got to cycle your tank. If you do not cycle your tank and you try to put fish in there, put a tank together in a 24-hour period and expect your fish to do well, you are absolutely asking for a disaster, because it just doesn't work that way. You have to go through the process of having that nitrogen cycle. Go through, it's a 3 to 4 week period, and the bottom line is you can have a beautiful tank of plants, substrate, rocks, and something to look at with just maybe a few snails in there, a few shrimp, or some other things that are not susceptible to these problems and don't create a lot of waste, and have these particular types of invertebrates start your tank off on the right step here. And the bottom line is most people don't have the patience for this. It's very difficult for people to go in the store with their kids. They go into a Petco or a PetSmart, big box stores. The kids are yanking at them and saying, "Mom, I want that fish, I want that fish," blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is we cave because we want to make the kids happy. We think that we can throw this thing together. Somebody like me comes up to you in the store and tells you, "No, no, don't do that. It's gonna be a disaster." Nobody wants to listen to that because they want to think that they are the exception. It's not going to happen to them because they're the exception. The bottom line is, if you do not see that cycle through and you do not buy yourself a test kit that does ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, and a few other things like pH and so forth. Those things, the pH isn't even that important because most fish are all over the place on pH if they've been tank raised, which most are these days. If they're wild, that would be a little bit different. But the bottom line is that you don't have a basic test kit to test ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, then don't even bother getting into this because you're not going to figure it out. If you don't have patience for this, stay away from it because it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost you a lot of stress, and you're going to see a lot of death in your tank of fish that you might get attached to over a few days. And the bottom line is it's really, really something that if you want a beautiful tank, you can have one, but it's so important to make sure that you see that cycle of your tank through. It's so easy to get caught up in people at Petco or PetSmart or any other big box store telling you, well, yeah, you can buy some good bacteria in a bag over here, and you can buy some products from Chem that get your tank off to a good start and whatever. And those things are all good, but they are not foolproof. And the bottom line is, if you don't have a lot of time and you are not paying attention, you're going to have a lot of problems with your fish dying, and a lot of heartache and a lot of money spent, and you'll be out of the hobby within a couple of months, if not sooner. So we got that out of the way. Here's my number 2 with people that drive me nuts. They do not go out and do research on what kinds of fish they want, and they're putting fish in there of every kind. They don't have any idea of what kind of fish are schoolers, what kind of fish take what part of the tank up. They don't understand about cleanup fish. In other words, having a cleanup crew. Some of these things are foreign to people because it's not their fault. They're just not educated in this. If you are starting a tank, get out there and study. What kind of tank do you want? Do I want a Southeast Asian tank? Do I want an Amazon tank? Do I want an African cichlid tank? Do I want salt water? All of these things are so important for you to understand before you build a tank, so that you know exactly what you're getting into, because compatibility of fish is so important. You're going to see territorial battles. You're going to see all kinds of things that are problems with your fish not getting along, which causes stress, which in turn causes disease, which in turn causes death. And that's just the bottom line on it. If you're not doing your homework on this, number 2 on my list, like I said, is checking out what kind of fish you want to put in your tank and how you are going to set that tank up, and doing your homework to make sure that you're putting compatible fish in with each other, and you're not doing, well, my kid likes that color over there, give me 2 of those. My kid likes that color over there, give me 2 of those. Oh, that one's cute, give me 1 of those. Absolutely the worst thing that you could possibly do. Absolutely one of the worst things that you can possibly do. And I'm just telling you that up front, that second to not cycling your tank is having a tank full of fish that don't get along with each other and do not have any compatibility at all. And I'm going to leave that there, because I think I've said enough about that to make you understand that compatibility issues are extremely important. Now let's go to number 3. And this one, you can look at a lot of different areas online and see where people may differ on this, but water changes are so detrimental to the health of your tank, and especially when you have a new tank that has not established a cycle. You can have a lot of problems with not doing enough water changes. My idea of water changes is, and this may seem dramatic to people who are just starting in the hobby and don't have a lot of knowledge about this, but if you want to do a 25 to 50% water change daily on a small tank, let's just say you're starting out with a 10 gallon, you're doing a nano tank of some kind, or a 20 gallon or something like that, doing a 25, 30 to 50% water change daily is going to be the best thing that you do, because during the cycle you are going to take all of these problem situations such as ammonia and nitrites out of your tank, and you're going to give your fish a fighting chance to survive even beyond the cycle. It's a very delicate process even beyond the cycle to keep fish going until you have a well-seasoned tank. And when I say a well-seasoned tank, I'm talking about a tank that is 4 to 6 months old. I personally don't think that you should feel that you have a well-established tank unless that tank is 4 to 6 months old, and you know that you have good ammonia, no ammonia, no nitrites, and very, very small 0.20 on the nitrates and that sort of thing, you're in an area where your tank is cycled and you know that your fish stand a fighting chance. Now, the fourth thing I want to talk about is tank size. I see some of the most ridiculous things happen. I see somebody with a 20-gallon tank saying they want to keep discus in there. And I say, well, okay, are you breeding discus? If you're breeding discus, 20-gallon tank is fine because you can put a bare tank in there, put a cone in there, let them breed. No, I want to put some discus in with some Oscars and some other stuff here because I like the fish and blah, blah, blah. That is nowhere near enough room. Think about what you're doing. Think about the size of your fish long term, not the size of when you bought them in the store. Those kinds of things are what's going to get you in trouble, because the bottom line is what you're getting at the store may be this big when you get it and may grow to be this big before it's over. And when you think about that, is a 20-gallon tank really going to sustain that kind of fish size? No, it's absolutely not. So think about the kinds of fish that you're buying. Bigger fish need more room. It's just a natural thing. It's not even something I should have to mention, but I don't know how many times I walk into a fish store and I see people saying and trying to talk themselves into the idea that they can buy bigger fish and get away with having a 20-gallon tank. And I'm shaking my head. I want to say something, but I don't want to step out of my comfort zone and get into somebody's space or into their business and say, I wouldn't do that. It's up to the people at the store, and anybody that owns a fish store and happens to be listening to this video tonight, do yourselves a favor. If you want long-term customers, don't talk them into buying fish on the first day when their tank isn't cycled. Don't talk them into not making sure that they're doing water changes. Don't talk them into letting them buy fish that you know are going to outgrow their tank. Ask some questions. Be somebody who is an advocate for them. They're going to be a longer term customer, and they're going to appreciate the honesty that you're giving them long term if you tell them the truth about what they're doing and tell them, hey, I just wouldn't do that because it's not going to work out. And there's going to be a certain amount of people out there, when you tell them that, they're going to say, I don't care what you think, I'm going to do it anyway. Those kind of people, you're not going to be able to knock any sense in them anyway. So other than saying, I'm not going to sell you the fish, which you really can't do, let them buy what they want to buy. They'll be back talking to you and saying, yeah, you were right and whatever. But try to, talk logically to people. Most people will understand, unless they're just really people that have no idea what they're getting into, don't care, have a dispensable amount of income for what they're doing, and you know that they're going to be out of this hobby in a couple of months because they're just going to make mistake after mistake after mistake. Now, the fourth thing that I want to talk about is filtration. Now, I think filtration is something that is so important because I know that you're not always going to be able to do the water changes when you want to. Even if you're somebody like me who's very, very consistent about doing water changes and making sure that your water is healthy and your tank is cycled and whatever, make sure that you are putting some effort into understanding that what you're doing is the right thing from the moment that you start putting your tank together. It is so important to understand how water works, how filtration works, and how many tanks think they need carbon. But what if you have to medicate some fish in your community tank, which you should never have to do because you should always have a quarantine tank. But those who have one tank in their home and they have to medicate the whole tank, if you leave carbon in there, anybody that knows anything about keeping fish knows that that carbon is going to take that medication out of there, and you don't stand a chance on getting your fish healthy. So if you have to medicate your fish, you don't have to use carbon in your tank. I don't use carbon in any of my tanks in my gallery, simply because I don't want to try to guess which ones might have some carbon in it that I forgot about or whatever, and take a chance that the medications are not going to work in there. So understand your filtration. Understand that over-filtering is better than under-filtering. Make sure that you have enough filtration in that tank that if you forget a water change, or you're unable to do a water change, you're out of town or something like that, that you're not asking someone else to do it, but that filter is going to do the job for you and take up the slack where you're having a problem. So to me, that's an extremely important thing for you to understand, is that how filters work. Read about filters, whether you're having an internal filter, a hang off the back filter, an external filter. Personally, I have all of those on my tanks because I am a little bit on the overkill side to make sure that my water is crystal clear, healthy, and that my tanks are cycled and my water changes are done on a regular basis, just because I don't want any of these problems. It's a small amount of work. Literally, out of all the tanks that I have here, I spend a couple hours a week taking care of them, because I'm on it all the time and I'm very consistent about it. So understand filtration a little bit before you get into this hobby, so that you know what you're up against, and know that sponges are becoming very popular for filtration and do a very good job, and it is not always necessary to have carbon in there. This hobby is changing a lot and has been changing a lot for a while. So it's important that you understand that there are different ways of filtering that make it a little bit easier on there, on your daily routines and your weekly activities, as far as water changes and testing your water and making sure that your tanks are healthy. Now, the fifth thing is something that I shouldn't even have to mention, but it's one of those things that seem to come out of nowhere, that people really don't think about, and even people that I know that have been in the business for a while or in the hobby for a while don't really fully understand, and that's lighting. Now, if you have a bunch of plants in your tank that you've put in there and you don't have the right spectrum of lighting, you're just going to have problems with plants growing in weird ways. Plants being spindly that need more light because they're just dying to get up towards that light. Plants that are like Anubias and Java ferns and stuff like that are very low light plants that absolutely don't need a lot of light and don't require it. In fact, if you put too much light in there, they don't do well. They will yellow up on you very quickly. The nutrients from that light will take nutrients out of your water. People don't even understand that. If you read about it, you will understand that the lighting is one of the essentials in your tanks to make sure that your tank is healthy. You have to have the right kind of lighting for the right kind of tank, for the right kind of fish, for the right kind of plants. All of this stuff is so important. Now, I hope I've helped you today. This was something that came up. It was kind of a spontaneous video that I'm putting out here tonight, just simply because I've had this question come up the last couple of weeks. I'm new to the hobby. I'm hearing that a lot. I'm new to the hobby since COVID, and I want to get this right, and what should I do? Now, a lot of people are going to ask me those questions, and they're going to be impatient anyway, and they're going to do the things, they're not going to do the things that I tell them. I would hope that if you're listening to this video, that you're somebody who is very interested in being successful at the hobby and understanding that if you follow some of these basic rules, you're going to have an absolute wonderful time, and so are your kids, with a hobby. Now, many of us are you know, people that are just so serious about this hobby. It has nothing to do with our kids or whatever, but we're still susceptible to making the same mistakes as anybody else. So I wanted to get this video out there. I hope I didn't insult anybody or make you feel bad about yourself. I hope you learned a little something from it, and we're telling yourself during this video, man, I've made those mistakes and I really need to put in the work to make my tanks healthy. I really think if you do that, you're going to find that you're going to be a lot happier, you're going to stay in the hobby longer, and you're going to enjoy some absolutely beautiful tanks. Watch some of my other videos. Once you get past these first tank or two that you have, watch some of my videos and see how you can get to the more sophisticated tanks, the more sophisticated fish, the more sophisticated hardscapes, plants, understanding those, knowing them by their scientific names, understanding how water works in your tank. You know, wait a while, be patient. This isn't a hobby that lasts a week or a month or 2 months. This is a hobby that can last a lifetime if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to understand and admit to yourself that maybe you're making some mistakes. So anyways, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Like I said, off the cuff video here, but I thought it was important. I wanted to get it out there. If you have any questions, leave your comments down below. Like I say in all my videos, I will try to get back to you within 24 hours. If I don't, I apologize because my life is busy too. This is a hobby for me. This is not my living. It's not a huge channel. It's growing, but it's not a huge channel. Hit the like, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, like I said, down below so that I can answer maybe some more detailed questions that you might have, and share with your friends. I always appreciate it when people share with their friends. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Until the next one, thank you, and we'll see you then. Until then, we're out of here.